Welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast with Jacob Ayers, providing actionable content to help you along your journey to financial freedom through real estate investing. As the premier asset class, real estate has helped ordinary people just like you amass fortunes. The benefits of passive income from real estate investing will allow you to live a life you want. And now your host, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and apartment deal syndicator, Jacob Ayers.
Hi, and welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, episode 145. Hi, I'm your host, Jacob Ayers. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Well, this week I'm excited to bring on our guest, Brent Kawakami. Brent is a young professional based in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. He's got a really unique story. He's out there making a lot of deals happen. So we're going to dive into a conversation with Brent today. So really looking forward to that. Hey, Brent, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
What's up, Jacob? How's it going?
Hey, man, it's going good. I'm so happy to have you on the show today. A lot of people out there are probably familiar with you, but the people that aren't, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, your story, how you got involved in investing in real estate for your very first time, and just walk us up to your journey to this point.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Hawaii. I was born and raised there. Very typical childhood, sort of the get good grades, go to college thing, which is what I did.
Yeah.
So, went to school here in Texas, the University of Texas at Austin, Hookham. Got an engineering degree. So very much, very similar to you. We're both engineers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then got a good job out of college, and very much not the entrepreneurial guy. I was very much the, hey, I'm gonna get a good job. I'm gonna stash away a bunch of stuff from my 401k. All that typical plan. And, as time went on, I read this one book, that little purple book we all read, the Rich Dad book, right?
Yep.
Which ends up being like the gateway drug.
It's a rabbit hole from there.
Yeah. Right. And so then, you start exploring all these other avenues, right? So I opened, I had a little online business that I eventually sold on the side. I got into dividend investing and peer-to-peer lending and, all these other just, investment things. And of course, you stumble on real estate and, you see the things about, what is it? Like 80-90% of new millionaires are created by, small businesses, real estate. Right. And so, started exploring that, got hooked up with some educational groups. And then, so this was back in about 2012 when I got in, started just doing single family rentals here in the Dallas area, and then kind of slowly progressed up, getting into multifamily, bigger apartment complexes in 2015, and then kind of just kept going from there, which is my main focus now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So, like many people out there, you were raised with this blueprint, similar to myself. That's like, you're raised to go to school, get a good education, get a good job, further that education, go to college, studying something hard, science or math, or, something related, art history wasn't going to cut it, right? So, here you are and you do all those things. You find yourself in the professional world with a really good job. And from here, you could easily have a comfortable life from here on out. You could rise through, the ranks, climb the corporate ladder and, have a very comfortable and successful lifestyle. But something clicked for you. What exactly was that and when was that?
To be honest, I think part of it was, I got a couple years into my career, and like you said, nothing wrong with that, right? And I enjoy my the engineering side of things, but as you go along and you see folks around you who are older, been with the same company for 30 years, maybe you have folks that are clients or customers, and I saw folks where it's like, man, that corporate job was all they had, right? That was what their life was dedicated to, right? They didn't have a hobby. You had guys that, they're coming up on retirement and they're scared because they don't know what else they're going to do. I saw guys that, I had worked with, or maybe a client where it's like, he spent his career, with the focus and then neglected his family, right? And so, maybe he's divorced a couple of times or estranged from his kids, or, the health was going down the tube. And, to be honest, that kind of scared the shiitake out of me, I don't want to be like that in 30, 40 years, worried about all that stuff. And so I think that was one of the biggest drivers that kind of got me to, hey, I'm going to, get into some of these side hustles, right?
Yeah. So from there, you open that, that little purple book we all famously talk about, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's like a wormhole from there. You just get sucked into this whole world you probably didn't know existed. So, walk us through what exactly you started looking at. You're looking, you don't want to be that guy 30, 40 years down the line that, is worried about retirement or has to work an extra 10 years to remodel their kitchen or whatever it is. So tell us, a little bit about what kind of options you started exploring. You get out there, you're searching for stuff. What'd you find?
Yeah. So, I got into some other investments. So I started doing the whole, individual dividend stock investing stuff, so I did that, I got into gold and silver type of things. I started a little side business, online business that, I'd work on and, do the whole affiliate marketing and, ebook type thing, all that stuff. Yeah. So just, I explored different things like that. I'd gotten into, reading a bunch and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos of all different stuff. And then I think it didn't really, it was kind of me just trying and experimenting with stuff. And really it didn't start happening until I got into the real estate side of things. And so found an educational group here that I got plugged in with, and then, bought my first single family rental. And then that's kind of where it started. So
walk us through that first rental property you bought. What was it? What were you thinking at the time? You're investing in stocks, bonds, doing that kind of thing. You've got the side hustle, and then all of a sudden real estate. So where'd that come from? How'd you get involved? And walk us through that first deal.
Yeah. So the first deal, so back then, so this was 2012, right? So different market, right? And so the thing back in the Dallas area at that time was, you could buy a single family home, 322, 1,500 square feet, garage, 2-car garage, just the quote unquote all American home. Right? Yeah. You could get one, it'd be worth fixed up $100,000. You could buy it for, 50 to 60K because it was a foreclosure from a wholesaler or whatever. Put in 20, 30K and then, with hard money loan and then refi out, all that kind of thing. And, and you do really well from that. And then you'd rent it out. And, that's what I was doing. It was a great business model, a great business plan that I followed to do that. But, I think the thing with that was I got a few under my belt. And it was sort of it's going to take a while because, I'm adding, there's nothing wrong with it. But, each one of those houses was putting off $300, $400, $500 a month cash flow, which is great, right? Who's going to say no to that, right? But then you're like, if I want to really build this up, I'm going to have 20, 30, 40 houses, So
yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And it's one that many people come to realize at different times in their investing journey. My very first property was a single family house. And I thought really quickly, okay, this is cool. This, $300 a month in cash flow is really nice, but it's going to take a lot of these. And this one was pretty hard to get. It took me, 6 months to save up. The next one's going to take another 6 months to save up, on my young professional engineering salary. And so I quickly transitioned to small multis. So those were a little bit better. You got a little bit better economies of scale. But, the bigger that you go, the more economies of scale you get, the quicker you're able to scale and grow that portfolio. So
it's kind of like it's a natural progression, right, of a real estate investor. Because when you first get into that, it's brand new to you, right? You're kind of scared. Right?
Yeah, you really are.
There's butterflies, which you should be, right? It's the whole, people. Obviously people do really well, but people get killed too because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, sure.
And so, first you're like, oh wow, the first time you get a deposit or a rent check comes in from one of those houses, you're like, man, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Really that aha moment, right? You've been spending months, maybe years studying, listening to podcasts, reading those books. You get that first rent check, you're like, wow, this is cool. Yeah. This is the bee's knees. Let's do it again, right? Yeah. Ready to get that next deal.
Yeah, you have that aha moment, like you said, that aha moment. And then you have a couple of them, right? Because that's probably the first one when you get into it. And then you get a little down the road, like you're saying, then you're like, okay, I have another aha moment to maybe I need to scale or get bigger.
Yeah, right. Well, walk us through like that mindset, Brent, of getting that very first deal. It can be scary. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes a good chunk of money. It takes a lot of time and resources and energy. So a lot of people never get that first deal because they spend all this time in this education phase and this networking phase. Maybe some people don't even begin to get to that phase because they're just afraid that they're eventually going to have to pull that trigger. So walk us through that mentality, what you were thinking, maybe some of your, fears and motivations behind doing that first deal.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing or biggest help there is, and it sounds really cliche, but it's the whole find a mentor thing. Mm-hmm. If you find, it's sort of like no one's inventing anything new, right? It's sort of find someone who's where you want to be or doing what you want to do or a little bit ahead of you and copy. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And so I think that's where, when you're first getting into, real estate, whether it's just, a bigger deal or it's just, your first rent house, having a business plan and a model and someone to coach you through it or to ask questions that's where a lot of that fear can get taken away, right? Because the level of risk has gone down because someone who's done that before is helping you. I've heard the analogy used like, in like a NASCAR race car. If you or I hop in one of those things, the level of risk us driving on that track is really high.
You're definitely
right?
crashing into a wall and burning.
We're crashing, right? Exactly, right. But you put, Danica Patrick or one of those, I don't even know who the
Jeff Gordon or someone.
Yeah, exactly, right. You put them in there, like level of risk is not as high.
Yeah,
right. So it's the same idea, right? If you find a group or a person or whatever who's done 10 houses, we'll just say, right, if they're helping you along or you got someone ask questions for you doing your first house, the level of risk is way down, right? So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things as far as getting over that hump or that fear, right? Was it fear stands for what? False evidence appearing real.
That's a new one to me. I like it. I'll have to write that down. I also like the NASCAR analogy. There's so many more ways you could expand upon that. People more experienced doing laps around you. You and I couldn't get in a NASCAR and, do 200 miles around the track. We'd be doing 20 miles an hour and trying not to bump into each other. And, just so much great stuff to take away from that analogy. So awesome stuff. Yeah. So you buy your first single family, you do that process a couple times, and then what's next for you? What are you thinking? And, what's your kind of goal, next steps from there?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to, again, you're talking about what is that next aha moment, right? So you get a few houses down the road, which was me. And, there's nothing wrong, right? So I started looking for other houses and, as time goes on, it gets a little harder, right? Because the market's changing and things like that. And I had the moment where it's like, adding, another $300 a month cash flow to my, to my balance sheet. Hey, nothing wrong with that. That's great. But that's not life changing, right? That's not going to drastically, it's not going to drastically, change your life really. Right. And so I think that's when I had the aha moment of, I'd always known bigger multifamily was kind of the natural progression, like we said. And I had, like we've talked about, I've been, educating myself and, going to seminars and listening to podcasts and things like that. And it's sort of when you get to a bigger multifamily deal and you see sort of the exit checks that people you can get out of that. Right. And so instead of, you adding $300 a month from a house, you can deploy $50K, $100K at one time, and you're turning that into 200, 300, on an exit potentially. That's when it's life changing, right? That's when you can really like, oh shoot, I can do some stuff,
Yeah.
So I think that was sort of the mental shift that I started to have and what prompted me to get more involved in multifamily.
Yeah. So how'd you do that? That's a big transition going from these single family homes in Dallas to now we're talking about, looking at larger multifamily deals, a big jump there, lots of requirements to change your mindset and, just your actions. So walk us through what that looked like for you.
Yeah. So I think, and I mentioned the mentor thing. So that's obviously one. I think one of the biggest things on those is, so when I say bigger multifamily, I'm talking like 100 plus unit type apartment complexes, right? Not the 30 unit type stuff, which is fine too. But, when you get to those bigger deals, you start to get into obviously the bid dollars are bigger, right? But then you start to have groups that you need to bring together to be able to take on a bigger deal like that, right? when you're having down payments and, $1-2 million and up, right? Unless you're one dude sitting with all that in the bank.
Yeah.
Right?
As a younger millennial, you're probably not that person sitting with $2 million just looking to buy an apartment complex on your own. So
yeah, exactly. Right. You and I wouldn't be doing that, doing this stuff if that were us.
Yeah, right.
So you gotta have a team, right, to do a bigger deal like that. And you gotta pull investors together. And so what you typically see in those bigger deals is syndications of, multiple investors pulling resources together, and that may be money, that may be time, that may be expertise. And so, that was like what I found, and what I think is a great way of kind of making that next step is getting plugged in with groups like that. And then ultimately, hopefully, you have some funds to invest, and, you invest passively that way. With another, again, kind of similar to that NASCAR analogy, right? If I can, take my money and give it to the Jeff Gordon of an area who's done these things before, I feel a little safer, right? And I can, maybe I can sit in the car with him while he's going and learn.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, now let's talk about that. So you invested next after you transitioned out of single families into investing passively in larger apartments. So what does that look like, and what was your involvement with those deals?
Yeah, so typically, the way those kinds of deals are structured, you have general partners who are the ones that are putting together the deal, right? They're probably the ones, who found it, analyzed it, they're arranging the financing, all that stuff, right? And then they're bringing on limited partners, who essentially are the money partners, right? Mm-hmm. That could be, depending on the size of the deal, right? You could have, 20, 30 different investors at, $50K a pop kind of investing in a deal. And so the great part about that, and a lot of people like to use the airplane analogy. So it's sort of like, hey, your general partners, you got the guys up front, they're in the cockpit, right? Driving the plane. And you have all these investors that are getting in, coach or, business class or whatever, yeah, right? And but we're all going to the same spot, right? We're all investing in, a complex, trying to make a return, all go in the same direction. And so, as an investor, in that type of arrangement and a limited partner, it's great because obviously you're on the plane, right? you're in the game, yeah, right? Which is one. But two, it's kind of a great way to see a deal from the inside out because you're in it, right? Now you're not making decisions, you're not picking paint colors, you're not, managing the management company or whatever, but you're seeing the monthly financials, right? You're seeing the updates that come through from the general partner. You're doing your own due diligence, right? On both that general partner as well as, the deal, right? You're probably underwriting it yourself, right? You're doing your own research on a market or what that block looks like or the history. You're asking a million questions of the sponsor about, how did you come to that realization, or where did this come, or what about that? And so you're learning the whole time while you're on the plane, And so I think that's, if your goal is to get toward bigger multifamily, that's a great way to kind of get in the game, right? And then also build a track record because now you are an owner in a, X amount, unit complex.
Yeah, I love it. And it's kind of going back to, that mentor role that you talked about earlier in the episode. And that is, finding this mentor to help guide you through the process. So this is something that you want to do eventually is, syndicate larger apartment deals. You've identified that early on in your investing journey. So you're thinking, okay, well, how do I do that? I'm going to get around somebody who's doing it. I'm going to also invest alongside of them so I can learn the deal from the inside and see how it actually is operated and, financed and managed and all that. So really cool. So here you are, a passive investor, just getting, sit in business class, kick your feet up, learn from the, guys doing the deal. And,
and there's nothing wrong with that, I would say, because I think one thing that a lot of investors don't necessarily have is the self-awareness about, obviously we're all trying to make money, right? Mm-hmm. But I think one thing a lot of people miss is that, okay, you're trying to get to that, whatever that destination is, but really looking at yourself, are you the person that just wants to put in funds and invest in, because we all believe in this game, right? This real estate game. Do you want to be just a person who puts in their funds, sits back and send me a check? I got other things I'd rather do. Or are you someone who wants to be more active and syndicate a deal and do bigger deals, right? And so I think taking that step just first as an investor is great because you can kind of dip your toe in the water as well, because you may get in and feel like, wow, this is a lot of, that sponsor or that guy syndicating that deal, he's doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
Do I really want to do that? I got I'm an engineer job and I make good money. I don't hate it. And, I'll just make a bunch of money there, plug my money in these deals and, I'm good to go, So I think that's just, one point I would put out there as something for listeners.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. That is, take a step back, look at, what are your goals? What are your strengths? Are you the person? Do you have that personality? Do you have that time? Do you have that drive or motivation to go put that deal together, fly that plane, right? And, do all the work that's required to do that thing, manage it for the next 5, 7, 10 years, however long your hold period is. Or are you the person that wants to enjoy life and, travel and hold down their engineering day job and spend time with family and not have to deal with managing that property manager and, securing that financing and worrying about the refinance and just all those pieces, all those moving parts. So yeah, taking that step back and just, looking at yourself individually, kind of assessing your goals and kind of almost just engineering your lifestyle. I like to work in that engineering your lifestyle piece, as a mantra. Yeah. And really important stuff there and really cool. So you decided, hey, I really like this engineering thing. Or sorry, I really like this real estate thing that is engineering too. But
I like both.
Yeah, of course. Really like this real estate thing. You're going to invest passively alongside, this syndication, kind of learn the ropes, and you decided, hey, I want to do this thing on my own, right? So walk us through that next big step for you.
Yeah, so I kept getting involved in deals in that way, and so it was one of those sort of when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, so to speak.
You're killing it with the analogies today.
I'm an engineer, right? I got to draw pictures, think of, ways to explain stuff.
Yeah, I like it.
Right? And again, this is a relationship business, right? And so I met another guy through a relationship that I had, that back to the mentor thing, that, I could learn from and get into deals as the main syndicator that way. And so, got in, started learning a little more from him, got in his deals. And so ultimately, it progressed and, most recently, we closed a 114 unit deal out in Atlanta here a couple months ago. I was the lead sponsor on that deal. And so it's sort of, again, it's the natural progression, right? Relationships, find a mentor. I wish there was some secret to it, but there's not, right?
Yeah, there's no simple three-step proven system, sit in your pajamas and, cash this mailbox money. It's, you see some of these late night infomercials or these fly-by-night gurus and, just kind of puts a sour taste in your mouth. Like you said, there's really no shortcut to it. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication and takes a lot of time.
Yeah, because, back to the relationship thing, especially, if you're getting into bigger multifamily deals, there's a lot more relationships you have to build, whether it's obviously team members, right? Investors, attorneys, brokers, but you have to spend time building those relationships, right? In order to get into those bigger deals. And then, like I said, again, meeting the right people, right? Because all it takes is one person to really set your trajectory on a different course, right? All it takes is one relationship, one guy to do a deal with, one guy to, that you align with, and is able to partner with you, whatever it is. And so, it's definitely it's a proven game plan.
Yeah, definitely. So how long did it take you from the time you bought your very first single family property to closing or, getting under contract that 114?
On multifamily. So from the first single family to this last multifamily would have been, so the first single would have been 2012. And then, I did deals in between then and then probably, 2017.
So roughly 5 years.
Yeah. So this is not, obviously there are a lot of people who get rich fast, right?
Sure.
But I think the key is, it's, a lot of people get rich fast, because I would say, if you're someone who, gets to the point where, you build a portfolio in 5 to 7 years, right? And I'm not there yet. I'm still working on it, but I'd say that's pretty fast. That's better than sitting around for 30 years.
One thing I like to put in perspective is people think like, oh man, 5 or 7 or 10 years, that's so long to, have to grind and build a real estate empire. But at the same time, people are willing to spend the next 40 or 50 years at their day job, grinding away for somebody else under, not their own terms. So it's like, it's just all about perspective there. 5 years is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
No, it is. And then I like to think about too, like, so I've heard, again, back to
let's hear another one.
So I've heard the thing, there is such a thing as get rich fast. It's just people get it confused with get rich easy. Get rich fast and get rich easy are two different things.
Yeah, I like it.
So and then, I like what you said on the time frame thing, because you and I are both younger guys, yeah, right? We're millennials, right? So we got plenty of time, right? 5 years is not a lot, I'm a little on the older side of the millennial train. I'm in my early 30s, but that's young, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
If you follow Gary Vaynerchuk, he always talks about that, right? Like, you got so much time to do this stuff, right? So, it may seem like, especially for younger guys like us, oh shoot, it may take 5 or 7 years to get to a certain level, right? But you're young, dude.
Yeah, you've got nothing but time, and time is the biggest factor in this whole game, right? Like, if you've got time, you've got everything. And, speaking to our older audience members out there too, we're not just a bunch of millennials out there listening. So shout out to everyone, not in the millennial demographic, but, like you said, 5 or 7 years, if you're an older audience member, you likely have more money than Brent and I sitting in your bank account. So, you've got money on your side and not necessarily time. So, there's always ways to work around things. Now,
yeah, you got to find what you can bring to the table, right? If you're older and you have funds, that's something you can bring to the table, right? And you got experience, right? I know, you have life experience, if you want to call it that, yeah, right? And so you bring that to the table. If you're young and you don't have, a lot of money, you're young, you're hungry, you can go out and hustle and, be making calls and looking for deals and, doing that type of thing. So, it's just a matter of finding, back to that self-awareness thing we talked about, finding your strengths.
Yeah. Now let's dig into how you've invested and built this real estate business on the side of your day job as an engineer. Lots of people out there still have day jobs that, working a 9 to 5, and it can be difficult to, be able to carve out enough time. You have a family, you have a wife, a daughter, and you've got a lot on your plate. You're an apartment deal syndicator, you've got 114 units in your portfolio, if not more. And so tell us how you've managed to carve out time and just make it work on the side.
Yeah, definitely. Family keeps you busy for a while. So I actually have a son.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a son.
Yeah, you're good. Don't worry. So he's a little over 1 year, so he definitely keeps me busy. But so, yeah, it's definitely tough. And so, a couple of things I like to do to kind of keep me on track there. So one, I'm an early riser. So I wake up at 4 a.m. every day. And that's my time to kind of do things, right? Before I get into the office, for the day job. And, that's the other thing too, I'd like to say is, especially as a working professional, you have a professional obligation to do your job. Right. And so you're not doing anything to slack. You're not doing anything to take away from that. Cause you're there, you're doing the right thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I work around early in the mornings. I may take a phone call during the lunch hour. I'll stay up late at night, working on stuff. I'm I'm doing stuff on the weekends too. You and I were chatting before we got on the call. You have the 410s, and Friday, when you're off, that's your day to work on the side hustle.
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to find what works for you. And,
yeah, exactly. Right. And so, you figure out the ways where you can block in the time, and, there's obviously a million time management strategies out there that you can work. And, I think it goes back to like we talked about before, being self-aware. Are you willing to do that? Right. Is that something you want to do? Especially if you're going to do these, be more active in this space and do those kinds of deals. I don't I don't watch TV or a ton of it, right? I don't, I don't have I have a time that I want to spend with my family outside of stuff. There's some level of sacrifice you have to make if that's what your goal is. And so I think, it goes back to what are you willing to juggle and give up in order to achieve that bigger goal?
Yeah, it's all about your priorities, right? I mean, if your priorities are watching Game of Thrones and going to happy hour after work with your coworkers or whatever that is, you're probably not going to have time to come home and build a real estate empire or search for apartment deals or, start your podcast or whatever it looks like for you, whatever that side hustle is. It's all about prioritizing your time. You mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk earlier, and he's got this little rant tidbit. He says you've got all this time. Everybody's got the same 24 hours in the day, right? It's just about how you use your time, how you prioritize it, and what you're doing with it. So if you're at home not happy, but you're watching Game of Thrones and not doing anything about it, then do something about it. If you're happy with your life and you like where you're at and you like where it's heading, then no problem. Go out and do what you want and live how you want. So yeah, I love it. Just kind of
there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're all trying to do this to create a better quality of life, right? So if you're miserable doing it, what's the point, right? So it's I think one of the points on Gary's rants on that is that do your actions match what your goal is, right? It's fine to take the time to do other things, right? I'll be frank. So I do like Game of Thrones. That's the one I will watch it.
Yeah, that's your vice. Right? Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with any of that. If you like to do other stuff, it's just, if you're sitting there complaining about where you're at and what you're doing, that's when you got to reevaluate, okay, where are my priorities?
Yeah, I love what you just said. Do your actions match your goals? So important there. So yeah, just take a second, think about that. And, if they do, great, stay on that path. If not, change something and, get back in alignment with your goals. So really love that. Well, Brent, do you think that your path is one that's replicable? You haven't fallen into any kind of like lucky hit, you didn't inherit a bunch of money to go out and buy this very first apartment complex. You put in a lot of hard work, dedication, long hours. Is what you've done replicable to people out there listening?
Oh, heck yeah. Definitely for sure. I think, the kind of path, and, we talked about sort of over a several year time frame, right? There's nothing sexy to it, right? It's, you're working the day job, you're saving funds, you're educating yourself outside of it, you're going out to networking events and meeting people, you're actually doing stuff and doing deals, right? You're buying stuff, you're become active, you're slowly building a portfolio, and then you're progressing that way. And so, there's nothing fancy to it, right? I think the biggest thing is, we've talked about it ad nauseum here, but there's a lot of people who've done it before you, right?
Yeah.
So find that model and copy it. And obviously, there's hiccups along the way and things that, you may prefer to do a different way and whatnot, but it's all been done before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No need to reinvent the wheel. Find somebody who's doing what you want or is where you want to be. Follow that person and, just ride those coattails and learn from that person and replicate their success. It's not rocket science. It's real estate investing, nothing crazy about it. So yeah, just get out there, take action, find somebody that's doing what you're doing and just get after it. Yeah. So you're out here doing what we've been preaching. What's next for you? What are your future goals? What's in the future for you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty focused on multifamily now, and so we're continuing to look for deals. It's one of those that it's a little harder just because of the market conditions right now, and there's a lot of competition, stuff like that. But we're still looking to add to the portfolio. You may look at 100 deals to find the one, but that's fine. I'm willing to do that, right? And so kind of just continue on that path right now.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Well, Brent, as we're wrapping up here, we've got a lightning round, just a series of questions we ask every one of our guests. Are you up for it?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, cool. Well, the first question in our lightning round is, what was your biggest hurdle getting started investing in real estate? And then what'd you do to overcome that?
So probably the biggest hurdle, I'll give you, can I give you two?
Bet, yeah.
So one I'll say with the single family. was it was that mindset shift we talked about, where it was sort of okay, making that first flip from like I've never even bought a house before to getting that first rent check. And so that's sort of the first hurdle. And I'd say the biggest thing, or the biggest way to get over that, was when you just did it. And I'll tell you the one thing that kind of got me over it was when I saw that first rent check come in from my first house. That was when it was like, okay, that's when the light bulb clicked.
Yeah.
And so I guess the way to overcome it is you just got to just jump in and do it, because the reality is you won't know till you get there, right? The second one I was going to say was when you jump up to the bigger deals with the multifamily stuff. I think the biggest hurdle is because of the nature of that business. You got to have a partner or a mentor, someone to kind of get in the game, right? To see the deals, to even just get it alone. You got to have some experience. And so the way to overcome that, we've talked about it ad nauseum. You got to find a mentor. You got to find someone to get plugged in with.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. Well, Brent, you maybe alluded to it earlier, but do you have a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Yeah, so I mentioned the 4 a.m. thing. So I'll give you another. Yeah, that's a commitment. I realize not everyone can do that. I'm a morning person. So another one I have maybe is, so what I do is, so I have a moleskin notebook that I carry with me, and I do something that's called the Power 5. If you listen to a podcast by Andy Frisella, it's called the MFCEO. It's definitely if you get offended by curse words, you won't like it. But he talks about this thing called the Power 5, and the idea is that every day you list down the 5 tasks or actions that you're working on for that day, right? The big, sort of the individual actions that you need to progress in your goals, and it may be 5, it may be 7, it may be 2, but it's sort of the idea that okay, I need to record this podcast or write this memo or call this person or whatever, right? Whatever it is,
sure.
Right? And it's that big rock that's going to advance. It's if you ever read the book, The One Thing, right? What is the next thing that is going to get you, make the next thing easier,
right? Right.
And so it's sort of the thing. Like every day you're doing that, and there's something to be said too about like writing it down and then crossing it out, right? And so when you cross it out, and you're seeing the pages of, okay, every day I've crossed stuff off my list, right? Then that helps motivate you too, right? Because you're getting stuff done.
Yeah.
So that'd be another personal habit that I think keeps me on track.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's some science behind writing stuff down. It stays in the forefront of your memory. And I don't know if it's just me or what, but I get a lot of satisfaction out of checking that box, scratching it off your to-do list, right? So.
Yeah. Like, it's sort of like if you had the 2 or 3 big things you had to do today and you crossed them off, anything else you do that rest of the day is gravy.
You're
right?
It's all icing on the cake at that point. Yeah. Yep. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, Brent, next question is, do you have an online resource that you find valuable?
I don't necessarily have like maybe a website or anything like that. I'd say probably the biggest maybe sort of online thing is podcasts. So I listen to a ton of them, when I'm commuting, when I'm driving, when I'm doing chores around the house type of thing. So I'm listening to a million of them. I'm listening to them at 2 times speed, so I can get through it quicker. So I think, as an advice to the audience, that's a great way to educate yourself on this stuff. There's a bunch of great ones out there, like one's hosted by Jacob Ayers that you can listen to.
Sure.
But you can learn a lot of stuff that way. And so I think that'd be a great resource. If you haven't gotten to that game, there's a bunch of ones that you can listen to and pull some valuable information.
Yeah, I love it. And so true. That's actually how I got started being interested in real estate investing. Is just, one day somebody mentioned like, oh, you should check out podcasts. So get on my iTunes app, check out podcast. I guess I searched for something about, I don't know, real estate or personal finance. I can't remember, but I came across a podcast and it just like opened my world to like this whole new, whole new side of things I didn't even know existed. So yeah, obviously if you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about, podcast. Yeah. You've been listening to this one and I'm sure many of others. So such great content out there.
Yeah. And I'll just rattle off a few. Just so
obviously
yours is a great one to listen to. If you're looking for more stuff that's more introductory, or you're not necessarily target on specific stuff, Bigger Pockets has a great one where they explore things. There's one called Creating Wealth by Jason Hartman. That one's really good. My buddy Lane Kawako runs one called Simple Passive Cash Flow.
Yeah, we've had Lane on the podcast before. He's another young guy out there killing it. Really fun guy to talk to.
Yeah, so that's a great one. And then, I'm focused on multifamily stuff. And so if you're interested in those, a few good ones. The Yield Capital podcast is a good one. Michael Blanc has one out there. My buddy Juan Vargas has a good one out there. So just a handful. I probably have like 100.
Yeah, they're so hard to keep up with, but that 2 times speed certainly helps. I can manage 1.5 times speed on podcasts, but 2 is a little too quick for me. But yeah.
Depends on how fast they talk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael Becker with the Old Capital podcast, Michael Blanc, both of guys are great guys, super experienced in the industry. They've both been on the podcast in the past, and maybe it's about time to get them back on because those guys are both up to new and important, really cool things. So yeah, awesome stuff. Well, Brent, what book would you recommend to the listeners and why?
So probably one of the most influential books for me was Getting Things Done, GTD by short, by David Allen. And I read that like a decade ago, probably. But it's probably the one book that I can point to that I took applicable actions from and still do to this day. A lot of the books we read, are sort of like, mindset and strategy and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. Obviously you need some of that, but you and I are both engineers. We like actionable,
concrete, like black
concrete. What are the tactics? Yeah. What are the tactics, right? What do I do? Right. Yeah. And I think that the concepts from that book, were things that were actionable for me, and I still do them to this day.
Awesome. So that's Getting Things Done. We'll link that book in the show notes. That's a new one for me, actually. I haven't read that one, so I'll be picking it up right along with the audience members. Brent, last question in our lightning round is, if you were to give advice to your 20-year-old self to get started investing in real estate, what would that be? So
it's going to sound very cliche, but I wish I would have started earlier. I mean, just right out of school, while I was saving, like I mentioned, I was very much the max out my 401k, have a Roth IRA, blah, 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 blah. I wish I would have just jumped into real estate quicker. Just nothing, nothing fancy.
Yeah, I love it. So if you're out there listening and you're earlier than 20 years old, or you're, not quite 20 years old, that is Brent saying, get started now, do it, pull the trigger, buy that duplex in your college town, live in it, whatever that looks like. Just get out there, take action. I absolutely love it. Brent, hey, it's been a lot of fun talking with you today. I think you've given the audience members a lot of actionable content and shown that your path is one that's very replicable. You're out there doing things and learning from others, and you really preach the importance of having a mentor. So if you're out there and you're finding yourself, maybe struggling or not moving as fast as you'd like, find somebody that's doing what it is you want or is where you want to be. Look that person up, see how you can provide value to them, tag along with them, learn from them, and learn the ropes. And, it'll really increase your trajectory. So, Brent, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun having you on. For the audience members that want to reach out to you, connect with you, maybe talk more with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my direct email is Brent, Brent at hellomultifamily.com. Hello, like hello, right?
Got it.
Brent at hellomultifamily.com. So just shoot me an email if you want. I also work with a group called Think Multifamily, where we do deals, apartment deals, and then also educational events and things like that. So you can check that out at thinkmultifamily.com. We have events here in the Dallas area as well as and others, and so those are 2 ways you can hook up.
Yeah, awesome. And you're always at those events, so I'm sure that's a great way to meet and connect with you. I know our buddy Lane and other folks are always meeting up with you, especially a lot in the Dallas area. So just right up the road from me, I'm gonna have to make it up one of these days and connect with you guys. And so you guys have a conference coming up in Atlanta, is that right? Soon?
Yeah, so next month, October, I think it's 19th and 20th in Atlanta. It's actually going to be a deal analysis workshop. Okay. So it's going to go through, how to analyze these bigger multifamily deals, the spreadsheets and the numbers and all the nerdy stuff you and I as engineers like, right? So that's coming up next month in Atlanta. So, if you're interested, reach out for sure. But, kind of back to the real estate angle we talked about, analyzing deals, that's one of the most important things we do, right? So
at the end of the day, it's all about the numbers, right?
Yep, all about the numbers.
That's what I like to think anyways. Well, Brent, awesome, man. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show. As we're wrapping up here, is there any parting piece of advice you'd like to leave with the audience members?
No, I think the biggest thing we talked about it is just, I think the biggest factor that separates folks is self-awareness, right? Self-awareness on what you're good at, self-awareness on what you really want to do. So
yeah, I love it. Well, Brent, good luck with you on managing and executing your business plan over the next several years on that 114 unit in Atlanta. Awesome stuff. Congrats on that. That's a big notch in your belt. So it's awesome stuff there. We're gonna have you back on here in the future to talk about what you're up to next, because I know you've got some big deals in the pipeline. So looking forward to having you back on. Thanks so much for coming on today.
All right. Have a
Thanks,
good one.
Brent. See you.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, providing you actionable content to build your real estate empire. Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have a potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom, LLC, exclusively.